But it's hard to find that value because we think we have to show up in certain ways. We've been taught, like the corporate environment tells us, these are your values, these are the boundaries in which you can work in. But the secret is, and again, why I love your work, is because we don't have to play by those rules. Just don't play against them, but it doesn't mean you can't be yourself as well. And it's only when you're being yourself that you're going to start attracting those right people and having that right resonance, as you said.
Welcome to Play It By Your Rules, the podcast for those tired of living by somebody else's script and ready to live and lead on their terms. I'm your host, Maggie Rombach, coach, speaker, and strategist. I'm here to spark a little rebel energy and leave you with a sense of possibility. Each episode, I'll talk to leaders, adventurers, experts, and changemakers who found their way. Some loud and bold, others quiet and intentional. You'll walk away with fresh insights, inspiration, and practical tools to chart your next chapter. If you're craving more freedom, flow, and fun, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another episode of Play It By Your Rules by Maggie Rombach. And today I'm as excited as always. I have another amazing guest, Melitta Campbell. And today we go into a bit more quiet space because, as you know, finding your rules and defining your rules and finding your voice doesn't mean we all have to scream down from the rooftops. Our voice might be quiet and we might want to whisper our value. So Melitta is going to tell us all about this. Before we dive in, Melitta, I'll give you straight the word to introduce yourself because I know you wear many hats. So who are you and what mission are you on?
Thanks, Maggie. And can I just say it's wonderful to be here. I love the theme of your podcast, Playing by Your Own Rules. It's so important for us all to do. And often we don't challenge the rules that we've put in. We think we have to live into our different expectations and what the environment we're in. So I love that you're breaking that down. So I'm Melitta Campbell, as you just said, and I'm often referred to as the value whisperer because the work that I do is all about helping leaders, individuals, and business owners to understand their true value. And what I mean by that is not just your value or your values, but what's the context of that? How can you use that to create an impact you feel proud of? And to understand that true value and weave it through everything that you do so you naturally stand out as the obvious choice for your next opportunity, job, client. And so you don't have to be loud, as you say. You don't have to be loud. You can just whisper that value and the right people will start to be attracted to you so you can stop having to be pushy and you can be a lot more effective with your time and energy as well.
Fantastic. I'm intrigued. I know the horse whisperer. Actually, I worked on his farm for one summer. I don't know value whispering. So tell us a bit more, maybe with a concrete example, what that could look like concretely. Because I'm sure our listeners, some of them might be equally intrigued, but also wonder how they can whisper, but still bring across their point in an assertive way that people listen.
There are so many examples. This is always the hard part. How do I find just one? So, value whispering came about. My background is 30 years in marketing and communications. I've worked in small companies, several companies with about between 50 and 200 employees, and I've worked in large corporate. And then I started my own business as a consultant, where I was working directly with the leaders of some of the largest organizations in the world. So, I've looked at this from every angle, is the point here. And what I've seen consistently is that it's not how clever your words are or how loud you are, but how deeply you resonate with people and the right people. Because we're not trying to resonate with everybody. That's just not possible. And also, as someone who is more introverted and has a tendency to be shy, I'm not someone who naturally enjoys being loud in the center of attention. However, that hasn't stopped me from building an extremely successful career. I worked in private banking in my last role, and I ended up reporting directly to the CEO. As a woman in her early 30s, that was almost unheard of, particularly as I didn't even have a banking background. I was all in communications. So um, then I've been able to build three businesses, work as alongside, as I said, some of the most powerful men in the world. Not because I'm being loud or pushy, but because I'm connecting with the right people in the right way. There's a lot of people that wouldn't resonate with me. I'm not the right person to support everybody, but for the right people, I am amazing. But it's been honed over understanding what works when it comes to marketing and communications. And as I said, it's not about being clever, loud, gimmicky. It's about really understanding your value. So when I started out, I saw lots of small business owners, for example, when I started business coaching, and they were incredible at what they did. And they were trying so hard, they were networking, they were posting on social media, they were hosting webinars and things, but it wasn't working because they weren't communicating anything that was different. They weren't connecting and standing out in the marketplace. And for example, lots of coaches, the world's really competitive right now. Everybody's a coach, everyone's online. And every industry has become more competitive. And we're now moving into the age of AI. So it's even more important than ever to stand out for what's different. So how do you find that is the challenging part because for most of us, we spent our whole lives trying to blend in.
Mm.
And we've been told, oh no, don't stand out. Don't tell people about your successes and your strengths. That's bragging and that's bad. No one likes that. But on the other hand, we're also told, well, don't tell people about your failures because that shows weakness and we don't want that. But then you end up in this mid space where you are the same as everyone else. So you want to embrace all of this to really appreciate your skills, your strengths, everything, all those lessons you've learned the hard way, and cut through those to find the value. And as I said, that value in context of how you can use that to create an impact for the right people. So it's a bit of a process, but once you understand this first part, everything else follows very quickly. And you ask for a case study. So um, let's take the example of a lady.
Melitta, sorry, I
Yeah.
want to jump in because there's so many things I want to jump in on. This is so rich. And then we get to that case study. Because what I hear you say is really about creating connection, like a real connection. And one
Yes.
way to do that is to show up authentically, which is actually really relieving. It's like just show up who you are, right? So if you don't have to put that mask, it's even better, just embrace who you are. And that reminded me of a discussion I had with another coach, and she shared a concept she calls the dolphin radar or something. So it's basically on the idea that dolphins communicate on these wavelengths, the signals they send. And what you want to do is find the ones that catch your wavelength. You don't want to connect with everybody. You want to connect with the people that communicate on the same wavelength. And I thought that was a really beautiful analogy. And that's
Mm.
actually also the reason why I'm becoming a bit more, bold. Like I call it my mindful rebellion, played by your rules. I'm now talking a lot about freedom, fun, and flow because, and I always use sports analogies because that's me, so maybe that doesn't resonate with you and that's okay. But the people that are communicating on my dolphin wave, they will connect to that, right? So
Yeah.
is that kind of this concept more or less?
100%. I mean, if you're not being yourself, then you're going to attract all the wrong people and opportunities. And that's where we have this moment where we wake up and realize, well, is this it? Why am I even doing this? We're lacking meaning and purpose because we're showing up inauthentically. And therefore, we're not attracting the right people and opportunities to us. We're not able to really live into our value and do our best work. And so we're disappointed on so many levels. But it's hard to find that value because we think we have to show up in certain ways. We've been taught, like the corporate environment tells us, these are your values, these are the boundaries in which you can work in. But The secret is, and again, why I love your work, is because we don't have to play by those rules. Just don't play against them, but it doesn't mean you can't be yourself as well. And it's only when you're being yourself that you're going to start attracting those right people and having that right resonance, as you said. So, and I think this idea that you were talking about, freedom, fun, and flow, is key because if you're not having that, it's a signal that your alignment is off. And sometimes we think if our work feels easy, if it's flowing, if we're enjoying it, we're doing something wrong. But we need to step away from that because that's exactly how it feels when you are living in alignment with your value. And I say your value is more than just your values, that's part of it, but it's everything about you. And if we think about, the last time you gave someone some great advice, it didn't come from your university degree or what you've read from a book. Most likely it came from the struggles you've had and the hard things that you've overcome, or the mistakes you've made. So we need to really tap into all those lessons we've learned the hard way as well. And what motivated us to get through those? Why did we feel so passionate about sharing it? Because that is the key to our true value. And that's where we're going to make a difference and stand out as no one else. Um, and this is where some of the case studies can really highlight this. So I'll give you a very quick example of Catherine. I mentioned her in my TED Talk. She was a health coach. And so she had done all the same qualifications as every other health coach. She was working with similar people. She had the same values. So she couldn't see how she could stand out. And then we just got talking about why does she care about this work? And that's when she showed and started to tell me the story about when she was 41 and she looked old, felt old, was really snappy, didn't have good health. And she thought, oh, this is normal because I'm 40 now and I'm a mom. So, of course, I feel like this. However, when we were speaking, she was in her 50s and was full of vitality, feeling amazing, had well, very little health issues, and knew that we're being sold a lie that health is all downhill once you get to midlife. In fact, it's the opposite. Midlife gives us the opportunity to choose better and start doing things differently. So that was her mission. And as soon as she connected with this, like she put out a post on LinkedIn that same day talking about this, and already she was adding value, creating impact. People were reaching out to her. So she was connecting with people and having an impact. So as soon as we connect with that value, this impact happens really quickly. And I see it time and time again. People thinking, well, I'm the same as everyone else, but we're not. But it takes a bit of time to dig through. But once you find that, then you can really start to enjoy that fun, freedom, and flow.
That's amazing. I want to, I'll bring her on my podcast and I will know how she did it. I want to look like 30 when I'm 50 or 60. But so what I took away from that is how to stand out, and it's really through story, and again, it's vulnerability and authenticity, right? It's like sharing what made you struggle and what you learned the hard way. It's just amazing because basically if you just allow yourself, because that's, you have to be courageous to do that, right? If you allow yourself to show up vulnerable and share your struggles and just be yourself, then you even connect more. I mean, this is amazing because we've been told forever that we have to be strong, we have to do all these things, but if you drop all of that on top, we are better in communicating our value.
Yeah. And in my last corporate career, I did a lot of leadership communication coaching for the top 60 leaders within the bank where I worked. I started a women's network where I was helping them communicate their value as well. And what I saw consistently, particularly with the leaders, because there it was like 50-50 men, male and female. And but it was the same for everybody, that even the men who we just assume are confident were terrified about communicating because they were worried that someone would ask them a question and they wouldn't know the answer, or that people would see that they didn't quite have everything as organized, and they didn't have everything planned out and knew the future the way that they thought they were expected to. But because they were only communicating when they felt that they had the upper hand, then they were putting a barrier between them and their team. However, once we broke that down and showed them how they can be vulnerable without feeling in any way weak. Vulnerability is just being open and honest. And that's the best communication to have. So if someone asked them a question they didn't know, then they could just go say, well, that's really interesting. I don't know the answer to that. Would you like to go and find out and report back to us in our next meeting? And then it shows trust in that other person. It starts to build connection and it starts to break down that barrier between you and your team so you can have much more flow of communication, more openness. You get more commitment and you get more ideas from your team, and everybody starts to grow faster. And in fact, we saw that within the bank once we worked on those two areas, the female empowerment side, and which involved men as well. And it was more of a sort of culture shift and the leadership communication. Things changed within the bank within 2 years. Performance went up. We had more women promoted than at any other time in the organization. And the beautiful thing is the cost was negligible. It didn't cost
Wow.
hardly anything because we were just working with people to believe in their value, communicate that, and connect with other people. And it really just underlined to me the power of this approach. And that's why I call it value whispering, partly because it does resonate with my quieter style, but also it feels less intimidating to people that they don't need to shout, they just need to connect. Yeah.
I absolutely love that because I know there are also men listening. I noticed many women focus on women in their work, and of course it's hard to be a woman in a very competitive environment. But for guys, it's just as hard because they're told even more. You don't cry, boys don't cry. They probably feel even more pressure to be strong. So I very consciously that I want to work with whoever wants to work with me. So I love working with men for exactly that reason because I did notice through my friends and my peers exactly what you just described. I mean, all those high achieving guys, they're just human beings too. And they have their own fears. They feel maybe even more pressure on their shoulders that they have to be strong. So I think this is really amazing, this example to show that this is valid no matter who you are. So that would have been my next question. Is this because you mentioned you work with women? I mean, I know you work not only with women, but you focus a lot on women. You a bit describe yourself a bit, maybe a bit more of an introvert. So how about the extrovert man or just the extrovert? So this works just as well for them, right?
Yeah, actually, my book it's called Value Whispering, and the subtitle is "The Smarter Way to Market Your Small Business," in brackets, that just happens to be brilliant for introverts because it is also brilliant for extroverts too, because it's all about showing up as yourself. There's nothing about there's nothing about connecting as an introvert versus an extrovert. And as introverts, we do have to be more mindful of our energy and how we manage that, particularly with when you're doing your marketing. And a lot of that requires you to be in front of people and to be visible. And that's great. We can 100% do that extremely well, but we just need to balance that energy. So that's perhaps the only difference. But to be honest, in today's modern world, everybody everybody's tired and exhausted, so it benefits everybody. And the more I do this work, the more I am completely convinced that the root of success is self-love, self-compassion, and self-respect. Because if we don't have that, then we don't put the right boundaries in place, we don't create the environment where we can live into our true value, where we can create this impact that we feel proud of, where we can generate meaning through everything and have everything that we want. Because it's true, we can't have everything, but you don't want everything. If we focus on what's most meaningful for us, we absolutely can have all of that. It's just a case of focusing and prioritizing and having those boundaries. We were talking about that before we came online, that having these clear boundaries is so important. And Brené Brown says, the people she's met who have the strongest boundaries are the ones who create the most value in the world because they can. They have that energy, that mind space. They've dealt with their priorities first, and so they can be as generous as they want with sharing that value far and wide as well. So yeah, I think that's the kind of hidden side to all of this. And if we're not respecting ourselves, and it is really hard to go and say with complete intention and conviction, hey, I'm amazing at this, by the way, and to really step in and believe that value. So, although what I take people through is communications and marketing and sales, that doesn't work if people don't understand their value and believe in it. So I've had to extend the work that I do around this as well. So I'm also a certified mindset coach, so I can coach people through that part of it, because I could give people the perfect messaging, the perfect marketing plan, and it wouldn't work if they didn't really believe that that represents them and in their ability to make this happen.
That's so true. And again, that so resonates because, I went through a pretty rough patch last year. Part of it was being really burned out at work. And I remember my boss telling me, and he was really kind and caring about me. He's like, I think you need to work on your self-confidence. And I was like, like, you need to have my back more. You need to, you talk about my self-confidence. And now in retro perspective, he was spot on because I was very dependent on external recognition, on wanting to be seen, wanting all of this. And of course, it's important to be recognized, but it's also good to not make your own worth dependent on that. So really to be, as you say, self-conscious, self-confident, all of that, it's hard work, it's so hard to get there, but it's really important for all of this. The other bit that helped me about boundaries is a book. I always confuse the same guy who wrote two books. One is Essentialism and the other one is Effortless. And I always forget which where the quote comes from. But it's about saying no. And basically, what he says, if you say yes to the wrong things, you automatically say no to the important things because there are only so many hours in the day. So if you feel you have to say yes again to this other thing they ask you at work, that means you just said no to picking your kid up at school. And it's such a simple quote, but for me, that really hammered it home for me. So maybe because before we talked also a little bit about saying no, and like, how in your experience working with the people you work with, you also notice that setting those boundaries, that's so hard, right? Because remember you had a few really cool examples around that too.
Yeah, I think we seem to have this real problem with saying no. But as you said, it's so important because you mentioned there that you were burning out and it was linked to your confidence, but actually when you started digging into that, it was linked to your boundaries, and not having clear boundaries and understanding why they're important and how they're helping you do more and have more impact and create more value. Because once you understand that connection, it does become easier to say no, because you can see, well, yeah, I could help you do this one thing, but actually I'd be much better doing this. So a while ago, I was involved in an organization and they were asking me to do some help with the organization. Now, I'm not terribly good at organization. I forget things, and it's just not what I love to do. And I said, well, if you want, I can help you there. But where I could do much more value, I think, is I can help you promote this event and to market it. And they hadn't even thought about marketing because none of them like that. So they were like, yes, please. So we don't have to say no, F off, never speak to me again. I think sometimes we think no is being of disservice and letting people down, and we don't like that. But instead, if we see that no is being of service and say, no, but I can help you here, or I'd love to do that. Is it okay if I do it next Wednesday? Now, here's the thing. I mentioned that I did some communication consultancy for almost a decade, and I always had clients coming to me saying, we need this by tomorrow, or we need this like by Monday. And it's like 5 o'clock on a Friday. And it's like, great, I can absolutely do that. However, for me to do this in a way that I believe it's going to help you the most, it will be done for next Friday. Is that okay for you? And every single time, every time they said, yeah, that would be great. You know, everyone was always putting pressure on, but when we push back, we realize that actually, it's fine. We don't need to take on so much pressure. And you mentioned the event I was at last week, and someone was saying, but they keep asking me to do this, but it makes me drained. I don't enjoy it. I'm not very good at it. What can I do? And I was like, say no. And it just hadn't occurred to her to say no. I mean, it sounds so obvious when I say it now, but she was just in this environment. She didn't have boundaries and had just got so used to saying yes that she was just drained and in this like risk of burning out and was just miserable. But if she can start to say no, and as you say, it'll enable her to say yes to more of the right things, she'll have much more impact, and she's going to put herself in a position where people see her for the impact she creates, the value she brings, and they're going to give her more of that to do. And that was 100% my experience in corporate as well. I was always looking out for, and was very clear about, well, this is where I believe I can have the most value. And I'm only going to say yes to things in this space. And if anyone steps over the line, I'm going to challenge them on that. Everything else, I will let go. And so people started to understand, okay, if I kind of go into this area or say something along these lines, Melitta's going to challenge me on that. And the moment that I knew that was when I was heavily pregnant. I had morning sickness. So I was in a 3 hour meeting and I wasn't concentrating terribly well. I was just really focusing on just staying present. Um, and somebody said something, and then everybody in the room turned to me and said, aren't you going to say something to that person? And I was like, oh, sorry, I think I drifted off there. And yeah, they said something that was completely against my values and what I believe in and what my team were trying to achieve. And then yes, I did challenge them. I was like, great, I understand where you're coming from, but I really strongly believe that this is the wrong thing to do. How about we move over here and do it this way? And then we were able to have a conversation and I was able to shift them on that. But I was just so like proud of that moment that everyone it was became obviously obvious to me that people understood my value and what I stood for. And that's when I started to get regular promotions, invited to into more interesting projects. I was invited to be part of magazine articles and speak on stages and things like that. And all that came to me. I didn't ask or push for any of this. So, standing up for your value, it has just so many upsides. I think it's the first step in achieving more of what you want, whatever that is and whatever the context.
Wow, that's amazing. And it also makes me think on this whole spectrum of saying no or not now, right? Because as you described, you can say not this, but something else. So you redirect, or you say not now, but a bit later. Or sometimes you just need to say no. And one of my previous bosses, she challenged me, said, and now the real art is, because I would say no, but then I was like, this day I have this, I would explain myself a lot. It's like the next level of mastery is you just say kindly and firmly, no, no, I can't. That won't work. And
Yeah.
that's so tough. And of course you don't want to use that all the time, but sometimes you just have to say no, and you just planned it. You go quiet, you don't explain yourself. And that's really the level of mastery that I think is the toughest for all of us to get to that point, to just
Mm.
own that, right?
And I think you can, when you learn sales skills, you learn objection handling. And I think this is a really important skill for all of us to learn because when people say, can you do this? There's so many ways we can respond and it doesn't need to be a no. It's like, you know, is this important? Is it important to do right now? Is this a game changer? Why is this so meaningful right now? And then you can start to unpick it a little bit. And you may even find that I often found I wasn't the right person to do it anyway. It's like, great. If you speak to so and so in this department, they'll be able to help you with that and they'll be able to do this in a really short time. It's not really my skill set. So, I could do it, but it won't be done well and it won't be done anytime soon. So there's so many other options. And I think exploring that is going to help us feel so much more confident. I say not just saying no and feeling like we've let someone down or we're being mean or whatever, but saying no and being of service through that no.
I love it. That's your mindset coach coming in. I see. So if we circle back to value whispering and networking, because we're both based in Switzerland, but I know it's not just Switzerland impact, but there are many people being laid off in really all sectors. So many of the listeners might find themselves wondering about their next professional move. Maybe they just been laid off, or they're afraid they might be laid off. And especially in Switzerland, but I think it holds true everywhere, networking is such an important way to find your next opportunity. So how could that concept be used practically in networking as well?
Yeah, I think it's becoming even more important now than ever because everybody is using ChatGPT to write their CV and motivation letters. So everyone's got a perfect CV that doesn't necessarily represent them and their personality. And this is how we're going to stand out, is for people to really understand our value. So we need to look for ways to stand out and demonstrate our value to help people experience that and see, so that they can start to see how we're different. So there is room to get very creative here, but networking, they're meeting you in real life. You can't fake who you, well, you could fake who you are in real life, but they'll feel that. So if you're being yourself in real life, then you're going to start to, as I say, create that connection. And my big networking hack um, is to speak on stages because
Mm.
I'm quite shy, and that this is how, and it sounds really crazy when, when I explain it. Being the shy person, I prefer to stand on stage. But the thing is, then you don't have to do any small talk. People come to you, and you can advertise yourself to the whole room. This is my value, by the way. And then the right people come and talk to you afterwards. So that's my ultimate hack. And of course, we're both part of Toastmasters. So if public speaking isn't something you feel confident at right now, get yourself to Toastmasters. They're everywhere. And start building those skills. They are really crucial life skills, especially as I say, in this time of AI, being ourselves, being able to communicate our ideas clearly, has never been more important. So, yeah, but I find networking, I wrote a book, A Shy Girl's Guide to Networking, which was all based on my experiences here in Switzerland of having to figure out networking as someone who's painfully shy at the time. And the big part of that was really two parts. One was getting my mindset in the right place, understanding why I was doing this, why it was important, and how I could show up in a way that was natural and allowed me to offer value in these settings. So I I tried being an extrovert on networking and it didn't work. It didn't feel right. I messed it up the whole time and it just didn't, I just wasn't connecting with the right people. As soon as I started to find my own way of networking that did feel comfortable, I made lots of connections. I got known for my network, and that was the start of everything. I was asked to speak on stages. That was when the book came about, and so on. So, when you're yourself and you're networking, you just don't know what amazing opportunities are out there waiting for you. And that's the only way you'll find them is through connecting with other people. They don't just come to you naturally. They find their way to you through this web. And being in like the Swiss Alps as well, getting to the bigger networking events in the big cities is difficult. So I do a lot of that networking on LinkedIn, and I
Mm.
invite people for virtual coffees one on one, and that's networking. And anytime we're connecting with other people, that's networking too. I just landed a very perfect contract. I mean, it couldn't have been more perfect. It was very well paid, which was nice, but it tapped into all of my skills from someone I met in the gym, from them getting to know me bit by bit, understanding, talking about my book. Well, what's that about? And then like, oh, well, we're looking for someone to do this, and we've struggled to find that. Do you think you could do that? And I was like, yes, actually, I've done it before. And I don't think there's anyone else in Switzerland that's qualified to do this particular thing that I'm doing for them. So think more broadly about networking as well. It's not just going to the official events where everybody is, it's also looking in the periphery as well. Um, and one perhaps example for that is my old sales mentor. He had a property company for a while, but they were going to exhibit at property fairs and they would just get a small sell a small number of properties that way. But then they dug into their like who is it that values our properties the most? And it was dentists. They found that 60% of their clients somehow were all dentists. So they started exhibiting at dental fairs and they sold all of their properties. So sometimes when you understand how your value can, like, how you can use that in context to make the biggest difference, you can get some different ideas that not everyone else is doing because that's not their value. Like, the crossover between your value and the people situations you want to impact, I call that your value sweet spot. And once you know that, it can give you some really creative, wonderful ideas that no one else is doing because we all have a different value sweet spot. So that was a little illustration of how it can happen. And you can have that freedom, fun, and flow when you focus yourself on having the most impact in a way that suits you. Yeah, it all starts to come together.
I love that. And I wanted to pick up on two things because you did mention Toastmaster, and I find it indeed counterintuitive that you say I'm an introvert and I go on stage. But funnily enough, I just published another podcast with from our club, our president, who also claims to be an introvert. So, and he's now the president of our Toastmaster club. So there seems to be maybe it is a space for introverts to take the courage because it is scary. But once you're out there and you can prepare your speech, there are ways you can manage. So I think that's really fantastic, unexpected tip for introverts to put them all the way out of their comfort zone, but really then see the opportunities come to them. I love that.
But
The other bit of,
can I just say that,
sure.
introversion isn't to do, like, I am shy, but that's got nothing to do with my introversion. That's my personality. So there are lots of introverts who you'd mistake as extroverts. Lady Gaga, Beyonce, Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, they're all introverts. So being introverted is just a way that our brain is wired, and we have a slightly different brain setup that means that we have a bias for thinking. So we will take ideas, we'll think and reflect, and then decide on the next moves, which actually makes people, introverts, amazing at networking, amazing at speaking, and some of the best leaders. So I just wanted to put that out there that introverts, it's we can do everything that extroverts can do. It's just a case of understanding our preference, how we operate the best, and so how we can create the right environment for ourselves, and making sure that those we don't get completely drained by social situations, that we manage our energy. So um yeah, to the introverts, do whatever you want to do. If you're thinking in your mind, it'd be really cool to do this, don't use introversion as an excuse not to do it. And I think that was something that I did for way too long. And then other people were very quick to jump on and say, oh, you're an introvert, you can't do these things. And my first book, in the end, it was called The Shy Girl's Guide to Networking, but at first it was going to be a series of books called Introverts Can, because I think,
Yes, we can.
yeah, it's this common misperception that too often we own ourselves and think we can't do these things. So I think it's quite dangerous. And I'm doing a bit of research at the minute just to dig into that a little bit more and have something that's a bit more helpful as a framework than introversion, extroversion, because in reality, we're all ambiverts. 99.9% of the population, we're ambiverts. It depends on the situation as to how we feel comfortable, but we can absolutely learn and grow and develop new skills to make sure that we can show up the way that we really want to.
Well, thanks so much for clarifying that because I think it's so true. And I learned something new myself. I always appreciate that. So because I wanted to ask you about your new book, but before we get there, just the other bit I wanted to pick up is networking on LinkedIn. And probably by the time this podcast episode comes out, that's the week where I'll be running a workshop at work about networking, including on LinkedIn, because I so agree with you, because over the last year or so, I tested a lot of approaches how to connect on LinkedIn, as you say, maybe through direct messages, through connecting through threads. And I think it's such a powerful tool. It's not just the virtual business card where you connect with the person you just met offline. It's such a powerful tool to find people, no matter where in the world, that might connect with what you have to say. So I think that's something I would encourage listeners also to explore more. So with that, before we get to the quick fire burst questions, can you tell us a little bit more about your new book that I think will be coming out very soon, right?
Yes. Depending on when this goes out, either very soon or it's just come out. It's called Value Whispering, a smarter way to market your small business, in brackets, that just happens to be brilliant for introverts. And it goes through the 3 stages of the value whispering blueprint. So the first, as we've talked quite a lot about, is understanding your true value. So everything about you that's unique and special, embracing your values, your strengths, your learned experience, and your that wisdom you've gained from all of your challenges and struggles and mistakes and all of that. And then looking at, in this case, it's for small businesses. So we're looking at your dream clients. Who are they exactly? And it goes way beyond the demographics, because too many people look at the demographics, but it doesn't tell you about who that person is, what they're struggling with, what their dreams are, what a day looks like for them today, and how that could look differently after you've worked together. Because only by really understanding that person, you can create what we've talked about, this resonance between the two. Then we look at the overlap, the value whisper, the value sweet spot, and then how do you weave that through your marketing and your sales to create a simple, straightforward process that allows you to connect with your dream clients, stand out as their dream choice, and at the same time build the self-leadership. So your boundaries, your habits, your behaviors, creating the right environment and your mindset. So all of this works together. And I'm already starting to work on the follow-up version to that, which is a version for people within an organization. So leaders, for example, those are aspiring leaders. And what the only thing that's different for them is where we're looking at marketing and sales. Internally, I'm looking at your presence, so how you show up in the moment, your influence, how you build on that over time to build that respect and credibility and all of that, your personal brand, I guess you could call it, and the choices that you make, which enable those two things. So we're looking at that, but then the habits, behaviors, boundaries, all of that is the same. So it's a similar process, but with this difference. And in between, I'm researching this introversion, extroversion spectrum from a different angle as well.
That sounds amazing. So essentially, you pack all your knowledge because you also run proper 1-year programs. So that's, of course, the pricier ticket, right? So you basically put all your knowledge into a book that is going to be affordable for everybody who wants to understand that concept better.
Exactly. It's the book of the show. So my program is all in the book. However, there are additional elements within the program that you work through with me as well, because I couldn't put everything in the book. But what I really enjoyed and what I always enjoy with writing books, this will be my 7th book, is it pushes you to really think your process through differently, because it has to be presented in a way that's easy to read. Everything links to the next thing, so it has that flow and people can follow it. Because I really want people to be able to come out at the end with a clear marketing strategy that they feel really confident about, that really represents them at every stage, and that they feel able to handle the sales conversation as well, because that's missing from too many marketing books, is the entire process plus this sales bit in between. Because I see a lot of people holding back because that's the bit that they're unsure of, or they're dreading the sales conversation, so they're not working on their marketing the same way. So we need people to be confident in the entire process of meeting a client, like for someone who doesn't know them for the first time, and taking them on a journey to become the perfect client as well. So yeah, I'm really excited about the book.
Fantastic. I'll get myself a copy once it's out. Sounds really interesting. So Melitta, here comes the challenge.
Okay.
You know the game. So I challenge all guests what I call quick burst questions. So I have 7 questions, and I challenge you to answer with one word. Now, I've done that myself. I know how difficult it is to answer with one word, but let's try. And if it's sometimes 2 words, so be it. Are you ready to go?
Yes, let's try this.
Excellent. So can you please share one belief you had to drop to live your way?
I'm struggling to put this into one word, but I'll say not asking.
Nice. A place that cracked something open in you.
Ooh. Kids?
I'm sure that cracked a lot of things open, but yeah. One thing you had to unlearn.
Oh gosh, so many things. I can't say it in one word, but this whole concept we were just talking about earlier about what an introvert is and isn't.
Yeah, I just learned that, and I think it's super important. You're non-negotiable right now.
Boundaries.
Of course. The boldest risk that paid off.
Value whispering.
One word for your leadership or life in this chapter.
Connected.
The ripple you would hope your story creates.
Can I say a wave instead of a ripple?
Sure. Think big. Yes. Which wave? Which tsunami would you like to create?
Again, I can't say this in one word, but I believe if everybody understands their true value and lives into that, the world will be a much better place because they'll be better utilized, they'll avoid burnout, everyone will be using the best of their skills and experience. And that's something I'm really excited about.
Wow. And everybody would be happier in that process, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Melitta. That was amazing. And thanks for playing along with the quick fire. That was pretty spot on. I know it's hard.
I'm cheating my way all the way through with several words.
Yeah, but that always happens. But at least the ambition is to stay concise. And
Okay.
I think that's really interesting. So to close this out, and if there's someone listening who's now fired up and they want to value whisper or, just something, is there one small step you could suggest to listeners that they could start trying out today or tomorrow?
Start with understanding your true value and step away from what you think that is. Like break it open a little bit and say, look at all the things that have gone wrong and what that taught you and why that has made you so passionate about the work you do today or the work you dream of doing. And also look at it, like brag away, understand for yourself and appreciate your skills and experiences and everything that's brilliant about you. Even if you're not telling other people, when you embrace it and appreciate it for yourself, people will feel that. You'll be able to show up and do more of that. So I think, yeah, start with really boldly understanding your true value and living into that.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thanks so much, Melitta. This was truly inspiring. Thanks for joining. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Maggie.
That's it for today. If this stirred something in you, don't just sit on it. Do something, anything, today, right now. Take one small intentional step toward more freedom, flow, and fun. And see where the ride takes you. If this hit home, follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave a review. That's how we ripple this energy further. Want to go deeper? Head over to mindset/mastery.ch for coaching, tools, and next steps. Until next time, trust your gut, stay curious, and keep playing it by your rules. Bye for now.